Dead America. Boise Part 4 by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Corporal Bretz and Alex stood at the precipice of the open warehouse bay door, gazing down at a sea of hungry creatures that had them squarely in their sights. Decrepit arms stretched over the threshold, grasping at air as the creatures' ribs cracked against the concrete edge. The force of the mob behind them crushed the ghouls against the bay, but it did not deter them from trying to reach their fresh prey. 20 yards to their right, a doorway led to the office area of the building, along with an unknown number of zombies. Several of the creatures had been taken out by a torrent of gunfire from the men, but both knew it wouldn't be long before more ghouls poured through the door. "Well, this isn't exactly how I thought today was going to go," Bretz muttered. "We're not beat yet," Alex replied. "Yeah, I know," Bretz said with a sigh, "but damn, just once I'd like these runs to be easy." Alex let out a chuckle, nodding. "You and me both, brother." "So what's the play?" Bretz asked. Alex glanced around. "Pretty safe to say that going out through the bay doors is out of the question." Bretz walked over to the chain beside the bay door, careful to stay out of reach of the outstretched hands of the ghouls below. He gave the chain a good yank, opening the door further so they could get a better read on the situation outside. Hundreds of creatures stretched out over the street between the warehouses, the majority of them directly in front of them and towards the factory to the east. To the west, their numbers were smaller but still significant. "If we can get out of here," Bretz said, "we should be able to push through them and get to the vehicle." Alex nodded. "We can try the back door and hope they haven't pushed that far back." Bretz walked back over to the edge of the bay door, looking to the west and the corner of the building. He spotted several dozen creatures vanishing around the side of the building. "I can't tell if those things are going into the office or if they're headed to the back." "Let's go have a peek then," Alex suggested. Bretz nodded as the two men moved quickly through the warehouse, cutting a straight line down one of the aisles. In moments, they found themselves at the back of the building, looking around for a door. "I got one," Alex said, pointing to a fire escape door 30 yards to their right. Both men rushed over to it, stopping just shy of the door to prepare their weapons before daring to turn the knob. "This door pushes out," Bretz said, "so it's going to be a bitch to close if those things are out there." Alex nodded, raising his assault rifle to the ready, giving Bretz a wink and a smile. "If they try to get in, I'll make them regret it." "I guess that makes me the lucky door opener then," Bretz replied. "Just stay low, and I'll cover you," Alex instructed. Bretz got into a kneeling position without a second thought, prompting a chuckle from Alex. "Something funny?" Alex asked. "An hour ago, we were trying to kill each other," Bretz replied, "and now you're covering me." "Life's funny like that," Alex said, then snapped back into business mode, aiming his rifle at head level towards the door. "I'm ready on your mark." Bretz took a moment to compose himself before reaching up to the door release. "Here we go." He gave the release bar a push with enough force to open the door a few inches. Within seconds, a set of zombie arms reached in through it, quickly followed by several more. Alex didn't hesitate. He immediately opened fire on the mob outside. Several bullets found their marks, hitting ghouls in the head and dropping them, but one of them fell into the doorway. Bretz reached out to try and grab the door, but his arm was smacked away by flailing zombies, all of whom were frenzied due to the presence of a meal. "Forget it. The door's blocked," Alex shouted. Bretz disengaged, pushing off and falling backward before rolling over and crawling toward Alex, who was opening fire. By the time the corporal got back to his feet, the door was halfway open, and zombies were shambling through it. "Come on, we gotta move," Bretz urged. "To where?" Alex asked. Bretz hesitated before answering, knowing that it was a good question for which he didn't have an answer. "The office?" "That works for me," Alex replied. Alex fired off a couple more shots before joining Bretz in a sprint toward the offices in the corner. As they arrived, a couple of creatures were pushing their way out from inside. Bretz pulled his sidearm, firing a couple of well-placed shots directly into the heads of the creatures and dropping them. Wanting to get ahead of the situation, he stepped up to the door, firing half a magazine's worth of bullets into the office, striking down several creatures that were shambling towards them. Brett looked past them, seeing a couple dozen creatures inside who were now intently focused on them. It looks like we're getting more popular by the minute. Is it that bad in there? Alex asked. There's a couple dozen at least, probably more, Brett replied. We have the bullets to fight through them, Alex said. Before Brett could respond, moans echoed throughout the back of the building as more zombies pushed their way through the open door. I don't think we have a choice, Brett said. He pulled his rifle to the forefront, checking the magazine to make sure it was mostly full before slapping it back in. However, Alex wasn't doing the same. Brett noticed that his partner was deep in thought. Are you good, Alex? Brett asked. Brett, Alex said. Do you trust me? The corporal thought about it for a moment before nodding. I trust that you want to live just as much as I do. I'll take it, Alex replied. Alex reached into his bag of explosives, pulling out a large block of C4 with a digital timer on it. In response, Brett let out a long sigh mixed with a horrified laugh. That's a bold move. It's not like we can carry it over to the next life if we save it, Alex said with a grin. Brett stood there for a moment, deep in thought, before more moans coming from the rear of the building broke his reverie. What the hell? Let's do it. A devious smile spread across Alex's face as he set the timer for 15 seconds. With a slight nod to Brett's, he hit start before pulling open the office door and throwing the C4 as deep into the room as he could. Go, 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 go. Both men sprinted away from the office area, straight down the row of bay doors as they kept a countdown in their heads. When they reached 5, they darted down the next aisle, taking shelter behind a wall of boxes. A few seconds later, the entire building shook from the force of the explosion. Several boxes near the offices fell off the higher shelves, which was minor compared to a handful of industrial-grade racks collapsing. You good? Alex asked. Yeah, Brett replied. Let's move before they have time to regroup. Alex nodded before leading them out from cover, both of them pausing briefly to take in the massive amount of damage from the blast. Debris stretched for 50 yards from where the offices had stood. The collapsed racks had fallen toward the back of the store, creating a barrier for the zombie mob to overcome. The offices themselves were largely gone, reduced to rubble, which was easy for the men to see as sunlight poured in through the giant hole in the outer wall. Damn, Brett muttered. How much did you use? Enough, apparently, Alex replied. Come on. Both men began running as hard as they could, keeping their focus trained on the path ahead. They adjusted their steps to avoid the large chunks of wall and zombie parts in their path, which grew more significant with every step. As they approached what was the entrance to the office, they got a better view of the street outside. Dozens of zombies lay on the pavement, several struggling to get up from the blast, their missing limbs making it all the more difficult. Past the blast zone, dozens more creatures were converging on their position and quickly forming a wall. Light them up and clear a path, Brett commanded. I'll follow your lead, Alex responded. Both men emerged from what was left of the offices, maneuvering around the slow-moving corpses confined to the pavement. Once they cleared them, the men raised their assault rifles and opened fire as they ran. Each of them sent half a magazine's worth of bullets toward the growing wall of creatures. Several zombie heads exploded from the torrent of fire, creating a bit of an opening. With 10 yards to go, Brett and Alex got shoulder to shoulder, picking up as much speed as they could before slamming into the weak spot on the zombie line. Several creatures tumbled to the side, but one managed to reach its hand out and trip up Alex as he ran by. Brett cleared the zombie line but spotted his partner falling to the ground just a couple of yards away from the turning creatures. The corporal didn't hesitate, spinning around and firing his rifle as quickly as he could locate a target. Within seconds, half a dozen zombies dropped to the ground, giving Alex enough time to pull himself up to his feet. I'm good, Alex called out. Let's keep moving. Brett fired off a couple more shots before joining Alex in running down the street. They managed to get 3 warehouses up before spotting more trouble ahead. Damn it, Brett cursed. 2 warehouses up, just in front of their vehicle, dozens of zombies poured out from the south, drawn to the gunfire. The men stood there for several moments, watching as more and more emerged from the side streets. Where in the hell did they come from? Alex wondered. Maybe that fence finally gave way? Brett suggested. Could be, Alex replied. So what do you think? Brett asked. You want to push through them? We still need to cause the diversion, Alex reminded him. You don't think one warehouse is going to do the trick? Brett questioned. Alex opened up his explosives bag so that Brett could look inside. The corporal took a glance, spotting half a dozen more explosive devices. You don't mess around, do you? What can I say? I like being prepared for any situation, Alex replied. Brett looked back the way they had come, seeing that the 1,000-strong horde was still a few hundred yards away and closing. We get inside this one and set it up quick. 3 minutes, in and out. That works for me, Alex agreed. The duo exchanged a fist bump before turning their attention toward the warehouse, looking for a way inside. It only took a moment for them to spot a partially open bay door toward the western end of the building. The two men jogged over, sliding inside the building and sweeping the immediate area but finding no resistance. The warehouse was mostly empty, with half the space taken up by empty metal racks and the other half filled with boxes. Thanks to this, it only took Alex a few moments to spot the maintenance door on the back wall. I think we're alone in here, and I see where I'm going, Alex said. You stay here and keep watch. Just don't take too long, Brett replied. Like you said, 3 minutes, in and out, Alex assured him. Alex nodded before turning and running across the warehouse floor. Once his partner was at the maintenance room door, Brett took a few steps over toward the open bay door, taking a knee so he could look out, watching as the zombies shambled toward them from both directions. Just one more push and you're out of here, Brett muttered to himself, letting out a sigh, hoping that he was right. Chapter 2. Less than a mile west of the warehouse district, the rest of the militia and soldiers pulled into the fenced-in parking lot of a government office. As soon as they were inside, one of the militiamen emerged from a parked vehicle and shut the gates, locking them in. The caravan parked just outside the building, prompting a couple of other militiamen to emerge. As they did, Sergeant Copeland gave them a wary look, his finger resting on his handgun, ready in case they hadn't gotten the message from Tyler that they were supposed to be working together. He kept his eyes trained on them while talking to Kowalski, Baker, Johnson, and Wade. When we're out there, I want you to keep your heads on a swivel, Copeland instructed. Kowalski replied, It sounds like you don't trust these guys, Sarge. I trust them about as far as you could throw them, Kowalski, Copeland muttered. Kowalski paused for a moment, noticing that Copeland had taken liberties with the phrase. I thought that saying was always as far as you could throw them. It is, Copeland said, but look at my arms compared to yours. You'd at least be getting closer to the lack of trust level. Johnson, Baker, and Wade chuckled quietly, while Kowalski could only smirk and shake his head. Yeah, fair enough, Sarge, Kowalski conceded. Wade chimed in, so what's the plan if they try something? Waste them all, and do what you can to get back across the river, Copeland replied. His voice resonated with the other soldiers, who were well aware they were in uncharted territory, stuck in an uneasy alliance with men who would have preferred them dead. As they exchanged glances, they noticed Tyler speaking to the others before waving them over. Looks like it's showtime, Copeland announced. He led his men out of their SUV and walked toward the leader of the militia squad, who stood with a group nearby. While their hands weren't on their weapons, they were close enough to draw them if necessary. So what's the deal, Tyler? Copeland asked. Tyler responded, My man here said that our scout is on his way back. Should be here any minute now. Good, Copeland replied. That gives us time to lay down some ground rules. Tyler rolled his eyes and shook his head, dismissively waving his hand. We don't even know what the situation on the ground is, and you're already barking out orders. Not orders, Copeland corrected, just some simple rules to make sure everybody is on their best behavior. Tyler gave a dismissive wave. Whatever, man, say what you gotta say, and I'll do my best not to get offended that you can't take me at my word. Copeland let out a huff. He knew Tyler had a point. If they were going to get this mission done, he'd have to trust him, even if he didn't want to. Recomposing himself, Copeland spoke in a low but forceful tone. You know what? I'm just going to keep it simple. If any of my men don't make it back, then I promise you that you've seen your last sunrise. Tyler stared at Copeland for several seconds before responding. Is that it? Are you done? I've said my piece, Copeland replied. Tyler stepped up, getting right in Copeland's face. Good. Then I'm going to make you the same promise. The two men continued staring each other down, neither willing to budge. As they remained locked in their stare, Kowalski turned and saw the front gate opening, with a man on a motorcycle approaching. If you two are done measuring your dicks, Kowalski said dryly, I think the scout is back. Tyler and Copeland held the stare for another moment before Tyler stepped back and barked out orders in an angry tone. Get everybody in here, we have a mission to plan. Tyler led everyone inside, motioning toward a table set up near the back with poster board and markers. The top board displayed a crude drawing of the warehouse district, showing their previous target and plan of attack. As they approached, Tyler grabbed the top sheet and tossed it aside, revealing a new sheet underneath. He pointed to his scout. Draw it up, he commanded. The scout nodded and began drawing a large square in the middle of the page, writing school in the center. He made a small mark on the southwestern wall before continuing to mark it up as he laid out the mission. Okay, this whole situation is a shit show, the scout began, but I'll lay it out as clearly as I can. Now, as best as I can tell, this classroom on the southwest side is where our men are. Do you have an exact location? Tyler asked. I don't, the scout admitted, but I assume that it's near the middle of the mob that's pressed up against the wall. How many are we talking? Copeland interjected. On that wall. Hundreds. And there are hundreds more all around the building as well, the scout replied. So shooting our way through isn't an option, Copeland concluded. Not unless you guys have a stockpile of bullets you're not telling us about, the scout said with a wry smile. I'm pretty sure you boys took our stockpile, Copeland shot back. Tyler perked up as if to say something, but the scout quickly intervened. Anyway, shooting through them isn't an option, he reiterated. So what is an option? Tyler asked. Well, if we can thin the mob around the wall a bit, I think we can get a vehicle in there, the scout suggested. Drive it right up to the window and let our men crawl out. Johnson scoffed. I don't know what kind of experiences you boys have had with vehicles, but let me tell you, trying to push through even a moderate-sized mob in an SUV isn't going to work. I don't know how they manage it every single time, but those things love to get stuck in wheel wells. The scout nodded. I was thinking of something a little bit bigger. There are still several school buses on the property far away from the building. One of those should have enough power to punch through them. Getting them started is going to be the problem, though, Copeland mused. Those batteries have started to go. Just jump it with the SUV, Tyler suggested. Would that even work? Baker asked skeptically. It might break the SUV battery, but in theory it should work, Wade said with a shrug. Then we have our plan, Tyler announced. Not exactly, the scout interjected. What's the problem? Tyler asked. Those things are packed so tightly against the building that we're going to need to pull some of them away if we're going to make it through, the scout explained. I thought that's what those two guys we left behind at the warehouses were going to do, Tyler said. It's too far away to really get their attention, Wade pointed out, especially if I'm reading this drawing right, and the side of the building we need to get to is on the opposite side. The scout nodded, orienting himself on the paper before marking the warehouse district to the north and the downtown area to the south of the school. We could always pull those things into downtown, Baker suggested. Set off an explosion or some other diversion. That should pull enough away. Well, hell, if you're going to do that, Tyler interjected, then we'll just have a couple of guys set up across the street and pop off some shots. Then you'd be sacrificing those men because they'd be caught between two hordes, Wade countered. How in the hell would you know? Tyler snapped. Because we came through downtown, and there were hundreds of those things, Wade replied. And now they're at the school, Tyler argued. Perhaps, Wade said. Are you willing to risk your life on that? Tyler began to answer but caught himself. He glanced over at his scout, who shrugged. I'm sorry, Tyler, I didn't go into town. But with as many of those things as are at the school, it wouldn't surprise me if there's more in town. Tyler let out a long sigh, doing his best to contain his frustration. Even if we send a team into town, they're still going to be surrounded. Where the hell are they supposed to go? I can't imagine the bridge is clear. Kowalski spoke up. It's not, but there's another way. There's a raft on the water, a few hundred yards north of the bridge, and there's not much on the other side. Tyler studied Kowalski for a moment before nodding. Okay then, I'll lead a team into town to create a diversion. Sergeant, I want your team to handle the rescue itself. Copeland raised an eyebrow. That's funny. You didn't strike me as the type of man who would take the easier job. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to make this as easy as possible since you're so sensitive, Tyler replied with a smirk. I figure if you have Wayne, you'll be a lot more inclined to trust that I'm on my best behavior. Copeland stared at his rival, seeing the conviction in his eyes, and finally nodded. Okay, Tyler, I want you to take Baker and Wade with you. That's fine, Tyler agreed. You can take 2 of mine as well. 2 teams of 5 should be more than enough to get this done. Copeland looked around the room, seeing nearly a dozen militiamen. It seems to me we have enough manpower to get another team involved, he suggested. Well, you're wrong, Tyler shot back. What in the hell is wrong with you, man? Copeland barked. Getting our men out is the top priority. It absolutely is, Tyler replied. But it's not my only priority. I have orders that still need to be followed, and those orders require manpower, whether you like it or not. Copeland seethed in silence for a moment before nodding. Fine, we'll do it with a limited roster. My men are up to the task. As are mine, Tyler retorted. Tyler looked around the room and pointed to 2 men standing near the back. Both men were tall, muscular, and had the look of experience etched onto their faces. Nick, Brody, join the sergeant here and make sure Wayne comes home safely. Sure thing, Tyler, Brody replied. You can count on us, Nick added. The 2 militiamen walked over to Copeland, getting into his eye line and giving him a confident nod. Copeland nodded back. Before he could speak up, an explosion went off in the distance. What in the hell was that? Wade exclaimed. Damn it, Alex, what the hell are you doing? You're early, Tyler muttered angrily. They might be in trouble, Baker observed. Which is all the more reason for us to get our asses in gear, Copeland said urgently. Tyler, how long do you need to get that diversion in place? I can have stuff blowing up in 30 minutes, Tyler replied. 30 minutes it is then, Copeland decided. Now, when you boys get across the river, there will be an SUV on the other side of the tree line. Baker, Wade, take them to the farm and wait for us to get there. Sarge, Wade asked hesitantly. Yeah, I know what you're going to say, Wade, Copeland said. You're going to need a safe house to hold up in, and that one's as good as any. All right, Sarge, Wade agreed. We'll see you on the other side, Copeland said, nodding to his men before glaring at Tyler and motioning for his team to follow him out of the building. The sergeant got behind the wheel as everybody else piled into the vehicle. Okay, boys, let's all play nice with each other and take the fight to the real enemy. Is everybody with me? Copeland called out. A chorus of yes filled the vehicle. That's what I like to hear, Copeland said with a grin. Now let's get this done. Chapter 3. Tyler sat behind the wheel of the SUV as his team piled into it. Baker took shotgun, while Wade hopped into the back along with 2 other militiamen. Eric and Avery, well-built and stern-looking, carried expressions that spoke of experience. Wade broke the silence first, saying, "What's up, fellas? I'm Wade, that's Baker." "I'm Eric," one of the men replied, nodding toward his companion. "This is Avery." Baker grinned, leaning back in his seat. "Are you boys ready to blow some stuff up?" Tyler's voice was cool and measured. "My men are always ready." As Tyler drove towards the downtown area, a hint of venom crept into his tone. Baker, sensing the tension, looked over, but it was Wade who spoke up. "All right, man, look," Wade began. "I get it. This isn't an ideal situation. None of us want to be here, but we are. Now, Baker and I are a lot more laid back than our sergeant." Baker chuckled. "I mean a lot, a lot." Wade continued, "So there's no need to have that attitude with us. We'll do our jobs and follow your lead." Baker nodded in agreement. "And we're going to have your back, just like we hope that you're going to have ours." Wade glanced at Tyler. "Is that good enough for you, Tyler? Or do you want some sort of blood oath to make this partnership official?" Tyler's tone softened, though his next words carried weight. "Just answer one thing for me. Did either of you kill my men?" Baker shook his head, his expression earnest. "The only thing I've killed today are those things." Tyler's eyes narrowed. "And you, Wade?" Wade sighed, leaning back. "I wounded one when I very well could have killed him. And believe me, I had every opportunity to. Had him dead to rights, but popped around into his leg instead of his head. Even yelled for his partner to get him to safety." He paused, then added, "Which, by the way, once this is all said and done, you may want to check the neighborhood west of where your boys ambushed us. Because I'm pretty sure they're trapped in a house." Tyler stared at Wade in the rearview mirror, locking eyes with him. After several tense moments, he began to nod slowly. "I can live with that, and thank you for sparing my men." Wade shrugged. "I didn't do it for you, but you're welcome nonetheless." Avery, who had been quiet until now, asked, "So why didn't you kill them? If you don't mind me asking." Wade looked out the window, his voice calm but firm. "Because I assumed that they served just like me, so not all that long ago we were on the same side. They don't deserve to die just because some asshole 3,000 miles away threw a dart at a map and picked Kansas or Seattle." Both Avery and Eric nodded in agreement as Tyler took the long way around the area surrounding the school. It took only a matter of minutes for them to reach the outskirts of downtown, stopping a block away from the first set of businesses. The buildings stretched on for a couple of miles, with dozens of zombies in the streets, shambling about and not paying attention to anything in particular. "Binoculars," Tyler ordered. Wade handed him a pair, and Tyler studied the scene more closely. The further up the road they looked, the thicker the mobs were. Tyler muttered, "Damn it," before passing the binoculars to Baker, who reacted with a similar frown. "How bad is it?" Avery asked. Baker exhaled slowly. "Well, we're going to have to push through a horde of those things to get into position." Eric suggested, "Why don't we just set them off here and call it a day?" Tyler shook his head. "Because we're too far away from the school. It's a good mile and a half as the crow flies." "So how do we play it?" Avery asked. Tyler contemplated for a moment, then looked over at Baker. "You boys said you were ready to throw down and follow me. Did you mean that, or were you just talking a big game?" Baker grinned. "Just tell us what heads you want us to bust." "That's what I like to hear," Tyler replied. He stared ahead for another moment, mentally walking through the plan. "Yeah, that's going to work just fine. Eric, how many explosives did Alex leave us with?" Eric reached into the back of the SUV, grabbing a canvas bag and rifling through it. "Looks like we got 5. "Good," Tyler said. "I want 3 of them prepped for remote detonation." Eric nodded. "Copy that." Baker, curious, asked, "So what's the plan?" Tyler laid it out. "My plan is to pick up as much speed as I possibly can in this thing and plow through those assholes to get to the middle of town. If we're still running, Eric's going to toss those things out the window, and we're going to haul ass over the river." Wade's brow furrowed. "And if we're not still running?" Tyler's grin was almost feral. "Then we get to see just how good of a shot you two are." Wade and Baker exchanged a concerning glance before ultimately shrugging their shoulders and nodding along. "It's not the dumbest idea we've ever heard," Baker admitted. Wade laughed. "Yeah, you should hear some of the shit we had to pull in Seattle." Tyler chuckled. "It's good to know we have story time for when we get to the farm. Now, is everybody ready to roll?" A chorus of yes filled this SUV, prompting a rare smile from Tyler. "Then let's do it." He slammed his foot down on the gas pedal, causing the SUV to lurch forward and pick up speed rapidly. By the time they reached the end of the first block, they were moving at 40 miles an hour. By the next block, they were pushing 70. Tyler called out, "Hang on, this is going to start getting bumpy." Everyone in the SUV braced for impact as Tyler adjusted his route, just enough to avoid hitting the first batch of zombies head-on. Several creatures bounced off the front corners of the vehicle, flying through the air and crashing into the businesses lining the street. As they approached the next block, however, the crowd thickened, leaving no room to maneuver. Tyler gripped the wheel tightly as the front edge of the zombie struck the front of the speeding vehicle. The windshield splattered with crimson and bone as some of the more decayed creatures vaporized upon impact. Despite the obstruction, Tyler could still see out as more ghouls slammed into the SUV. By the time they reached the end of the block, the SUV was moving at only 40 miles an hour. "Come on, just 2 more blocks. You can do this," Tyler muttered to the SUV as if willing it forward. Despite his encouragement, the vehicle continued to lose speed at an alarming rate. A horrific noise erupted from the front passenger side wheel well. Tyler struggled to maintain control as one of the ghouls got caught up in it. "Damn it." Tyler cursed, slamming his foot on the gas again, hoping to break it free, but the damage had been done. Baker shouted, "There's an opening up on the right." "That's good enough for me," Tyler replied, adjusting course and rolling the vehicle toward the open space at the intersection. Once they were clear of the mob, he slammed on the brakes and threw the SUV into park. "Everybody out. You know what to do," Tyler commanded. All 5 men stepped out of the SUV, with everyone but Eric raising their assault rifles and opening fire. Within seconds, dozens of rounds popped off in all directions, ghouls dropping to the ground. Eric armed the first explosive, throwing it as far down the road as he could toward the horde they had just driven through. "Eric, throw the others up this way and get one inside a store," Tyler ordered. "I'm on it," Eric called back, arming the devices before tossing one into the middle of the street. He picked his target, a restaurant on the corner. 2 zombies stood between him and the window, but he didn't hesitate. He pulled out his handgun and fired 2 precise rounds into their heads before turning his aim to the window. A few shots later, the glass shattered, and he lobbed the explosive inside. "We're good, Tyler," Eric shouted. "Then let's get the hell out of here," Tyler yelled. Baker pointed up the street. "The raft is this way." "Take point and get us there," Tyler ordered. Baker nodded, giving a slight whistle to Wade, who immediately broke from his position and joined him at his side. Together, they moved quickly down the side street toward the river, firing away the entire time and cutting a path through the growing mob of undead. As the squad rounded the corner to the waterfront street, only a few dozen creatures stood between them and the raft. "Come on, we can push through them," Baker urged. The men formed a V, picking off targets ahead like they were at a carnival shooting gallery. In seconds, the path was clear. "Where are we going, Baker?" Tyler asked. Baker broke away from the group, heading over to the riverbank and looking down to spot the raft. "It's here. We're good." Tyler joined Baker at the edge, giving him a firm pat on the back. "That's some nice work, Baker. Let's get down there and get across." All 5 men descended the embankment, quickly paddling the raft across. After some strenuous climbing on the other side, they swept the area and, finding it clear, finally let their guard down. Wade laughed. "Well, that was fun." Avery nodded. "You 2 did some good work out there." Baker smiled wryly. "Sadly, it's not our first rodeo. Hell, it's not even my first time at that specific rodeo." The men chuckled before falling silent again. "Eric, do you have the detonator?" Tyler asked. Eric pulled it from the bag and handed it over. Tyler glanced at his watch, noting they had 2 minutes left. "How punctual is your sergeant?" Wade grinned. "Extremely." Baker chimed in. "So punctual, it's annoying." Tyler's lips twitched with a smile. "So if I popped these off a couple of minutes early, it would really stick in his craw?" Wade's grin widened. "Oh yeah, he would hate you more than he already does." "Perfect," Tyler said, smirking as he hit the button. A split second later, a deafening boom rose from Main Street. Windows rattled, and the men's ears rang as fireballs shot into the air, quickly followed by thick black smoke. "If that didn't get the attention of those things at the school, I'm not sure what would," Tyler remarked. "That should definitely do the trick," Wade agreed. "Come on," Baker said. "The SUV is just on the other side of those trees." Tyler nodded gratefully to the soldiers as they headed off toward their ride, ready for some much-deserved rest. Chapter 4. Copeland sat by the front window of a house just across the street from the school. A couple hundred yards away, a writhing sea of rotting ghouls pressed up against the building. The ones that weren't trying to get inside shambled around, drawn to every moan and banging sound that echoed around them. Behind him, his team prepared for the battle ahead. His soldiers, Kowalski and Johnson, looked over their weapons with one eye while keeping the other on the two militia recruits, Nick and Brody. Despite their shared mission, an uneasy feeling lingered in the air. Kowalski glanced at Copeland and asked, "How are we looking out there, Sarge?" "I'm not sure who the scout was," Copeland replied, "but they were damn good at their job. This place comes as advertised." Kowalski got up from his seat and walked over to join Copeland at the window. Even though he had seen the horde as they drove in, the sniper let out a whistle as he laid eyes on it again. Even if the distraction goes well, that's going to be a hell of a run. Nick chimed in, "Do you have eyes on the bus?" Copeland nodded. "Yeah, it's on the north side of the property. Unfortunately, they're just sitting out in the open, so we're going to have to be quick." Brody joined the two soldiers at the window, and the three of them focused their attention on the buses, which had a small gathering of creatures around them. "I have a suggestion if you're open to it," Brody said. "Speak your mind, Brody," Copeland encouraged. Brody took a breath and said, "A few weeks back, I had a situation where we needed to distract a horde twice that size. We didn't have the ammo to clear them out, so we had to get creative. After drawing the short straw, I made a run for a bus, sliding underneath and making noise." "And that worked?" Kowalski asked, raising an eyebrow. Brody grinned. "I'm still here, aren't I?" "Fair enough," Kowalski conceded. Brody continued, "Anyway, making the noise underneath the bus held their attention long enough for my team to take them out from behind with their blades. I think that can work here too." Johnson, skeptical, noted, "Some of those things crawl." "Yeah, I know," Brody replied. "But I'm counting on you guys being as good as you say you are. You should be able to clear them out before they're able to overwhelm me." Copeland chuckled. "If I didn't know better, I'd say you were calling us out." Brody smiled. "Think of it like a friendly challenge. Only I'm willing to put my ass on the line for it." "You're going to make the run to the bus?" Copeland asked. "Yeah, I'll do it," Brody confirmed. Nick's voice was tense. "Brody, are you sure?" Brody nodded confidently. "It's all good, man. Somebody's got to do it, and I know I can. We need to get Wayne out of there." Nick continued to give his friend a concerned look, but let it go after a confident nod from Brody. Copeland refocused the team. "Okay, we know what we're doing. How do you want to do it?" Brody stared out the window towards the buses for a few moments, formulating a plan in his mind before speaking. "We come at the buses from the rear. Leave the SUV a couple of blocks back. I'll run ahead and get them focused on me, and you move in and do what you need to do." "Let's pack it up and get to it then," Copeland decided. He glanced down at his watch, checking the countdown to the diversion. "We have about 10 minutes before the other team starts popping off." The rest of the men grabbed their gear and followed the sergeant out the back door of the house, where their SUV was parked in the yard. The drive was quick and uneventful, with virtually all the zombies in the area having been drawn over to the school. After several moments, the group was in position, the buses a block and a half ahead of them. Before they could begin walking towards the objective, Copeland turned and pointed to Kowalski. "Hang back with the SUV." Kowalski looked incredulous. "Are you kidding me, Sarge?" Brody added, "Yeah, what he said. You know I'm going to be fighting for my life under there, right?" "I do," Copeland acknowledged. I also know that we're going to be on the clock as soon as we take those things down. If they make too much noise, or the diversion doesn't go off in time, we could have a whole lot of attention on us. Brody thought about it for a moment before reluctantly nodding his head. Yeah, you're right. Just work fast. Copeland gave a reassuring nod. Those things aren't going to know what hit them. Brody extended his fist for a bump, which Copeland reciprocated. While it was a small gesture, one the sergeant had done 1,000 times, somehow this one carried more weight. 90 seconds, Brody said. We'll be ready, Copeland assured him. Brody nodded before turning and picking up the pace, his boots heavy on the pavement as he picked up speed. The militiaman raced down the block, the bus lot getting closer and closer. As soon as he stepped onto the parking lot, he drew the attention of a handful of creatures at the back of the buses. The ghouls turned and let out a moan just as Brody plowed through them. Both ghouls tumbled to the ground, smacking against the pavement and drawing the attention of the couple dozen other nearby creatures. Here we go, Brody muttered. He shoved another zombie to the ground before sliding on the pavement beside the bus. He wasted no time rolling underneath the vehicle, drawing his knife and wrapping it against the metal undercarriage. Yeah, that's right, come and get me. The militiaman kept a keen eye on the zombies surrounding him, knowing it was only a matter of time before one of them tried to crawl underneath. He didn't have to wait long, as a zombie to his right caught wind of the diversion, dropping to its knees and letting out an excited moan at the sight of fresh meat. Brody didn't panic, biding his time for the ghoul to get within reach before striking. He continued tapping on the bus until the ghoul was close enough to touch him. In a single motion, Brody spun the knife around in his hand and stabbed it through the eye socket of the creature. Any time now, Sergeant, Brody called out. He didn't have to wait long, as Copeland, Johnson, and Nick rushed toward the commotion, knives in hand and ready to strike. The vast majority of the zombies had been drawn to the bus, however. A couple of them didn't take the bait and were shambling toward the trio. With a simple hand gesture, Copeland motioned for the other men to engage. Neither man broke stride as they slammed their knives into the heads of the ghouls, yanking the blades free in a single motion. Copeland took the long way around, ducking behind the neighboring bus for cover so that he could approach from the rear. As he emerged, he had his choice of a couple dozen targets, all of whom were pushing against one another, drawn to the metallic clanging. The sergeant struck with frenzied ferocity, cracking skulls with his blade one right after the other. The ghouls dropped so quickly that the next one in line didn't have time to turn around once they heard their comrades dropping. Nick and Johnson worked in tandem, dispatching the zombies two at a time. It didn't take long for the trio to leave a pile of corpses in the parking lot. Copeland took down the last standing ghoul, shoving it aside before dropping down to one knee beside the bus. He let out a sigh of relief when he spotted Brody, safe and sound. Are you good? Copeland asked. Brody had 3 zombie corpses lying around him and was lying on his back, breathing heavily. Rather than respond, he just gave the sergeant a thumbs up. Take a minute and gather yourself, Copeland said. We'll get this bus going. He stood up, clicking on his communicator and speaking quietly. We're good up here, Kowalski. Just keep it slow so the noise is at a minimum. Copy that, Sarge, Kowalski replied. While waiting for Kowalski to arrive, Copeland turned his attention to the school, just a couple hundred yards away. For the most part, the horde of creatures was still intently focused on getting into the building. However, a breakaway group of a few dozen had taken notice of them and was shambling in their direction. How are we looking, Copeland? Johnson asked. We're on the clock, but should be okay, Copeland replied. A moment later, Kowalski pulled up, parking in front of the bus and popping the hood. Nick, give me a hand. Nick nodded and helped Kowalski hook up the jumper cables to the bus battery. Johnson, you want to start this thing up? Kowalski asked. The private smirked as he held up his bloody knife. Sure thing, Kowalski. I do have the key, after all. While they worked on getting the bus started, Brody walked over to Copeland and joined him in watching the shambling horde. I'll go ahead and tell you now, Sergeant, I'm not hiding under the bus for that group. Copeland let out a chuckle and gave his new squad mate a pat on the shoulder. With any luck, you won't have to. Before they could continue talking, they heard a trio of explosions going off in the distance. It wasn't as loud as they had hoped, however. "Jesus, was that it?" Copeland muttered. "I think so," Brody replied. Copeland adjusted his focus toward the southwestern side of the school, watching as only a handful of creatures began moving away from the building. The overwhelming majority of them were still pressed up against it. "Damn it. That's not good," he said. "Is the bus going to be able to get through that?" Brody asked. "Maybe," Copeland replied, "if we can pick up some speed before hitting them." He didn't seem confident as he turned back to look at the bus, which was struggling to turn over. "Even if we can get that thing to start, I don't think it's going to be going fast enough to do much good," Brody said. "I think you're right," Copeland agreed. He walked back over to the bus, giving the kill signal to Kowalski and the others. "This isn't going to cut it." "We can get it going, Sarge," Kowalski insisted. "It just needs another minute to charge up." "The diversion in town didn't work," Copeland replied. "There's still too many of those things around the building." Kowalski smacked his hand on the steering wheel in frustration before jumping out of the SUV. "Then what in the hell do? We just can't leave them trapped in there?" Copeland went deep into thought for a few moments before turning to Brody and Nick. "I don't suppose you boys kept any of the explosives that Tyler had?" Both militiamen shook their heads. "We didn't have all that many, so we let Tyler take them all," Brody explained. "What about your man who's back at the warehouses?" Copeland asked. "Alex. Could be," Nick replied. "Can you get him on the line for me?" Copeland requested. "He's on channel 6, Brody informed him. Copeland changed his frequency and clicked on his communicator. "Hey Alex, do you copy? It's Sergeant Copeland." "This isn't exactly a good time, Sergeant," Alex replied. "Tell me about it," Copeland said. "I just need to know if you have any explosives left." "You tell me," Alex replied. A couple of seconds later, a large explosion went off to the north. It was loud enough for the men to hear, but not overly loud that it would pull the zombies from the school toward it. "I'm glad you still have some, but that didn't sound all that loud," Copeland noted. "Don't worry," Alex assured him. "That wasn't our big finale." "Can you get to the safe house?" Copeland asked. "Yeah, we'll be there in 10, Alex confirmed. "We'll see you there," Copeland said. As the line went dead, Copeland gestured for everybody to get into the SUV. "Let's move. It's time for Plan B." Chapter 5. Bretz kept watch at the edge of the bay door, his eyes scanning the perimeter while Alex rigged the warehouse with explosives. It was taking longer than expected, and Bretz felt the tension build as dozens of nearby zombies began shambling toward them. "It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get back out this way," he muttered, standing up and taking a few steps back from the threshold as the first of the undead arrived. Within seconds, they were pressed against the edge of the bay, their decaying hands stretching inside, clawing at the air. Bretz drew his handgun, considering taking a few shots to thin their ranks. But he decided against it, thinking, all it would do is draw more of your friends to us. He holstered the weapon, eyes never leaving the growing threat just outside the building. A full minute passed before he heard running footsteps from behind. Instinctively, Bretz raised his rifle, but quickly lowered it when he saw Alex sprinting toward him. "Easy there, partner. It's just me," Alex called out. "What in the hell took so long?" Bretz demanded. "Door was locked, and it took me longer than I thought to get things rigged," Alex replied, slightly out of breath. "But this place is ready to blow?" Bretz asked. "Oh yeah, it's going to go up nice and big," Alex assured him. "That's good, but we have some other problems," Bretz said, motioning toward the open bay door and the dozens of zombies pressed against it. Alex glanced at the door and then back at Bretz. "Let's double back," he suggested. "You want to head towards the big mob?" Bretz asked, raising an eyebrow. "They should still be far enough back that they won't be an issue," Alex replied, taking a knee to peer out over the street. Most of the zombies in the immediate vicinity were focused on the open bay door, with only a few stragglers in the street. "Look, if we can get out and move fast enough, we should be able to run right by them." Brett considered the plan for a moment, then finally nodded. I'm not a fan, but it's better than wasting a mag of ammo to clear them out. Now we're talking. Come on, Alex urged. Both men picked up the pace, running back the way they had come along the closed bay doors. After about 50 yards, they found a regular door leading outside. I think this is our ticket, Alex said. Brett nodded, readying his assault rifle, and motioned for Alex to open the door. Alex paused briefly, giving Brett a nod before pulling it open. Oh shit, Brett yelled, immediately opening fire at the zombies just outside, hitting a couple in the head and dropping them to the ground just a few feet from the door. Shut the door. Shut the door, he ordered. Alex didn't bother looking outside, instead relying on Brett's judgment and quickly slamming the door shut. Seconds later, decrepit hands began smacking against the door. Those bastards are moving a lot faster than I thought, Alex muttered. It looks like we're shooting our way out of here after all, Brett replied. Not necessarily, Alex said with a wink as he reached into his bag and pulled out a smaller explosive. Brett shook his head with a wry smile. You're really living your best life in the apocalypse, aren't you, Alex? When the world has taken everything, you gotta take time to savor the little things, Alex replied with a grin. Brett let out a chuckle as they moved back toward the warehouse entrance. The number of zombies by the bay door had grown significantly. Without waiting, Alex tossed the explosive a few yards deep into the mob, and both men darted for cover. Alex's communicator crackled to life. Hey Alex, do you copy? It's Sergeant Copeland, came a voice. This isn't exactly a good time, Sergeant, Alex replied, his voice tense. Tell me about it. I just need to know if you have any explosives left, Copeland's voice continued. You tell me, Alex said, a devious smile crossing his face as he glanced at Brett before pressing the detonator. A second later, a giant fireball erupted through the mass of undead, the deafening explosion echoing through the warehouse. I'm glad you still have some, but that didn't sound all that loud, Copeland commented. Don't worry, that wasn't our big finale, Alex assured him. Can you get to the safe house? Copeland asked. Yeah, we'll be there in 10, Alex responded. We'll see you there, Copeland said before the line went dead. Alex motioned for Brett to follow. They raced back to the bay door, which had been blown off its track. Below, a crater filled with shattered corpses marked where the explosion had hit. That stuff doesn't mess around, Brett observed. No, it does not, Alex agreed. Moans filled the air to their left as the front edge of the horde continued to shamble toward them. That's our cue, Brett said. Both men jumped down, carefully stepping over the remains of the undead, knowing that even a partially intact zombie could still be dangerous. They sprinted toward their escape vehicle, which was a few hundred yards away. They relaxed slightly upon seeing that the coast was mostly clear, with only a couple of zombies standing in their way. As they ran, Brett pulled out his handgun and fired shots at the zombies, each bullet finding its mark. Within moments, they reached their vehicle. Instead of making a quick getaway, however, Alex paused, pulling out the detonator. Shouldn't we get further away before you do that? Brett asked. We're far enough away, we should be okay. Besides, look at how many of those things are beside the warehouse, Alex replied. Brett glanced back up the road, spotting hundreds of zombies slowly making their way past the first trap. Despite Alex's assurances, he took a few steps back, ducking behind the SUV. Seeing Brett take cover prompted doubt to creep into Alex's mind. Yeah, you're right. Better safe than sorry, Alex conceded, joining Brett behind cover. He nodded before pressing the detonator. The explosion erupted in two waves, the C4 going off a fraction of a second before the natural gas line ignited. The warehouse acted like a massive claymore, metal fragments scattering across the district. The fireball consumed the horde of zombies just outside the building, the heat so intense that both men felt it even from behind cover. As quickly as the explosion had come, silence fell over the scene. They remained behind cover for a few moments, making sure it was safe, before poking their heads out. I bet the sergeant heard that, Alex remarked. Hell, I bet Boise heard that, Brett added with a grin. Alex chuckled, slapping Brett's on the arm. Come on, we have places to be. Brett's nodded as they climbed into the SUV. Alex started the engine and pulled out of the warehouse district, heading for the safe house. So what's up? What did Copeland want? Brett asked. Apparently there are some problems with getting our men out, and they need some explosives, Alex replied. Well, that's less than ideal, Brett muttered. Tell me about it. Alex agreed. They drove several more blocks before Alex suddenly slammed on the brakes. What are you doing? Brett asked, surprised. Alex held up the detonator, and realization dawned on Brett. If we get too far away, it's not going to work, is it? I'm afraid not, Alex admitted. Well, hit it and let's go, Brett urged. Let's give it another minute, Alex suggested. Why? Brett asked, growing impatient. Because I want as many of those things to burn as possible. If I hit it now, some of those things are going to wander back the way they came instead of walking towards the fire, Alex explained. What difference does it make? We just need to keep them distracted long enough to get the Cap and Wayne, and we're out of here, Brett argued. You may be out of here, but there's still a lot of useful stuff in that warehouse. I still have people to watch over, remember? Alex reminded him. Brett thought about it for a moment before nodding. And the fewer of those things you have to deal with, the better. Exactly. As much as I love blowing stuff up, I'm okay not doing it on a regular basis, Alex replied. Fair enough, Brett conceded. They sat in silence for several moments, both scanning their surroundings for any surprise threats. Can I ask you something? Brett finally broke the silence. We got the time. Have at it, Alex replied. How is life in your camp, or town? Or whatever you have, Brett asked. While we do have a momentary pause on hostilities, I don't know if it'll last, so you'll forgive me if I don't give away too much in the way of specifics, Alex said cautiously. It's okay, forget I asked, Brett replied. No, it's not like that. I'll tell you what I can. It's just my higher-ups wouldn't be thrilled if I told you where we were, Alex explained. I can understand that, Brett nodded. Believe it or not, life is pretty normal, all things considered. At least for the civilians, Alex said. Really? Brett asked, surprised. Absolutely, Alex confirmed. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near as comfortable as it was before all of this. But we've scrounged together enough solar generators that our community has power at night. I would kill for some regular power. Not to mention a house to use it at, Brett sighed. Well, if you ever want to defect, most of our civilians have houses, although they do have roommates, Alex offered. But with power, they have television, music, and heat, Brett asked. They have all three in spades, Alex replied. That sounds like heaven, or at least what passes for it these days, Brett said wistfully. It's a lot more comfortable than my tours in the sandbox. That's for sure, Alex agreed. I literally would have killed for air conditioning over there, Brett chuckled. I'm pretty sure we did, Alex laughed. Their chuckles faded as Alex's communicator crackled back to life. We're at the safe house. How close are you? Copeland asked. Hey, Sergeant, we're about 5 minutes out, Alex replied. We'll be waiting, Copeland confirmed. It looks like we're back on the clock, Alex said. And here I was wanting to hear about the menu options. Brett joked. Let's just say that the only people who are happy are the vegans, Alex quipped. Ouch, Brett winced. Yeah, tell me about it, Alex sighed, holding up the detonator again. Brett gave him a nod. Hit it and let's roll, Brett urged. Alex pressed the button, and a moment later, another explosion rocked the area behind them. Both men glanced back through the rear windshield as a giant fireball illuminated the sky. For what it's worth, I hope that took out a ton of those things, Brett said. Same here. Because sooner or later, the non-vegans in camp are going to want to risk their lives if there's even a slight chance of finding some canned meat, Alex replied with a grin. Bretts laughed as Alex hit the gas, propelling them toward the safe house and their next mission. Chapter 6. Corporal Bretts and Alex drove toward the government building that had been repurposed into a safe house, spotting it on the horizon as they came around a corner. "That looks like Kowalski at the gate," Bretts remarked. Alex flashed the headlights a couple of times, prompting Kowalski to begin opening the gates. The sniper gave the duo a nod as they pulled through, then secured the entrance and joined them by the vehicle. "That was one hell of an explosion. What in the world were you using?" Kowalski asked. "Just your basic C4 attached to the main gas line," Alex replied. Kowalski nodded approvingly. "Yeah, that would do it all right." "How bad is it down at the school?" Bretts inquired. "It's not great," Kowalski admitted. "Copeland and the others are waiting for you in the first office there." "You're not joining us?" Bretts asked. "Nope," Kowalski responded. "Sarge wants me to keep watch out here in case we draw a crowd." The duo nodded to Kowalski as he strolled back over to the fence. When they entered the building, they heard Copeland grumbling in the office next to them. "He doesn't sound like he's in the best of moods," Bretts observed. "Don't worry," Alex said with a smirk. "I have enough explosives to brighten up his day." The corporal let out a chuckle as they entered the office. Copeland paced back and forth by the back wall, while Johnson, Nick, and Brody got up from their seats to greet the duo. After some small talk and fist bumps, everyone turned their attention to Copeland, who was still retracing his steps. "Hey, Sarge, are you with us?" Bretts called out. "Yeah, Corporal, I'm with you," Sergeant Copeland replied, his tone heavy with frustration. "I'm just not happy with our current situation." Alex stepped forward, a hint of confidence in his voice. "Well, maybe I can do something about that." He removed his canvas bag and tossed it onto the desk. Copeland peeked inside, spotting a handful of C4 devices. "Do you have anything less powerful than that?" Copeland asked. "I'm sorry, but I don't," Alex replied unapologetically. "Generally, when I'm asked to blow something up, the more damage I can do, the better." "Can you do a half block of the C4? Copeland inquired. Alex contemplated for a moment before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Sergeant, but these were rigged by somebody back at base camp, and I'm not ashamed to admit that they know a lot more about this stuff than I do." "Come on now," Johnson interjected. "It can't be that difficult to reduce the payload on those things. This stuff ain't rocket science." "True," Alex conceded, "but these devices were made to be deterrents if we needed them. So they're rigged." "Because of course they are," Johnson muttered, rolling his eyes. "I'm sorry, man," Alex continued, "but we've been at each other's throats the last few weeks. My people just wanted to make sure we were prepared for any scenario." "Well, most scenarios," Bretts added with a smirk. "It would have been nice if someone thought of this one." "I'll drop a note in the suggestion box when I get back to base," Alex joked. Bretts chuckled as Copeland returned to pacing, his brow furrowed in thought. It took a few moments before he spoke again, letting out a sigh as he did. "We're going to have to risk it," Sergeant Copeland declared, "because the longer we stay in town, the more likely it is that the Warehouse District mob fans out and comes across us." "So how do you want to play it?" Brody asked. "Those things stretch about 40 yards from the building," Copeland explained. "I think if we can drop the device 10 yards deep, there should hopefully be enough bodies to soak up the blast without it damaging the building." "And if it does damage the building?" Nick asked. "Then we better hope our men can hold their own until we can get the SUV into position," Copeland replied. Johnson let out a frustrated grunt, shaking his head and drawing everyone's attention. "I'm sorry, Sarge, but why in the hell didn't we do this plan to begin with?" "Because it's generally not a good idea to use C4 around people you want to keep alive," Alex explained. "Yeah, I know, but damn. Maybe next time. Let's just jump to the chase," Johnson grumbled. "I hear you, Johnson," Copeland acknowledged. "But this is what we're doing now." Johnson's frustration got the better of him, rendering him unable to speak anything other than mumbles under his breath. While he ran it to himself, Copeland grabbed the radio. "Hey Cap, Wayne, do you copy?" Sergeant Copeland called into the device. "We're here, Copeland. What's the good word?" Captain Kersey's voice crackled over the line. "Well, we have a plan to get you two out of there," Copeland informed him. "And the bad news?" Kersey asked. "We might kill you in the process," Copeland admitted with a grim chuckle. "I would expect nothing less from you, Sergeant." "What's the play?" Kersey replied. "We're out of options and running low on time, so we're going to have to drop some C4 in that horde," Copeland stated. There was a long pause on the line before Kersey came back on. "Well, that's certainly one way to go about it." "I'm sorry, Cap," Copeland continued, "but it's the only way we're going to be able to push up to the building." "Don't apologize, Sergeant. Just get into position and get it done." "However, a warning would be nice," Kersey responded. "We should be ready to go in 20, and I'll be in touch before we detonate," Copeland assured him. "Copy that, Sergeant, and good luck," Kersey said, dropping the radio to his side. He glanced over to Wayne, who was doing his best to stifle a laugh. "What's so funny?" Kersey asked. "Well, Captain," Wayne replied, "just think about everything we've survived, even before this whole undead hellscape kicked off. By all accounts, you and I should be dead 20 times over." "And that's funny?" Kersey questioned, raising an eyebrow. "It is when you consider that we're about to be blown up by our own men," Wayne said with a grin. "What was it you said to me?" Kersey remembered. "If anybody was going to kill me, it was going to be you?" "Something like that," Wayne chuckled. "It looks like I'm going to have to settle on being blown up with you." "If it's all the same to you," Kersey replied with a smirk, "I'd at least like to try and survive this rescue attempt." "Oh, absolutely, Captain," Wayne agreed. "I'm all about living to see another day. But I'm realistic about our chances." "You don't seem to have much faith in the men under your command, or mine for that matter," Kersey observed. "On the contrary, my friend, I have the utmost faith in them, especially the bomb builder," Wayne replied, his grin widening. Kersey thought about Wayne's words for a moment before chuckling and nodding. "Yeah, fair enough." Kersey turned his attention to the outer wall of the room, struggling to figure out the best way to reinforce it. However, as he looked around at the children's desks and little else, he knew there wasn't much that could be done. "If these walls come down, we're going to have guests, and a lot of them," Kersey muttered. "So what are you thinking?" Wayne asked. Kersey scanned the room, attempting to formulate something resembling a plan. Finally, something clicked. "I'm thinking the coat closet at the back will give us some cover for when that blast goes off," Kersey suggested. Wayne smirked, speaking in a playful manner. Captain, if you wanted to play 7 minutes in heaven with me, all you had to do was ask." Kersey let out a chuckle as he playfully flipped off his counterpart, prompting even more laughter from Wayne. It took the captain a moment to recompose himself, focusing back on the plan. "So what do you think?" Kersey asked. "Do these walls survive the blast?" "Probably not," Wayne replied. "I'm pretty sure when my daddy was a kid, he would have complained that this place was old. It looks like there's a lot of years of neglect in these walls." "Okay, let's assume they come down," Kersey continued. "It's going to take them some time for the SUV to reach us, which means we're going to have a fight on our hands." "Well, let's get us a barricade set up then," Wayne suggested. "These desks aren't going to trip them up for long," Kersey noted. "Good thing for us that we don't need them to," Wayne replied. Kersey nodded at the plan as Wayne got up from the teacher's desk to help the captain build the barricade. The two of them worked in silence for a few minutes before Wayne finally spoke up. "So have you put any thought into what we do from here?" Wayne asked. "I honestly don't know, Wayne," Kersey admitted. "If there aren't any ammo supplies to be had, we don't really have much of a mission." "Well, if you and your boys wanted to leave, I can guarantee you safe passage back to Seattle or wherever you wanted to go," Wayne offered. "I appreciate that offer, but that decision is out of my hands," Kersey replied. "Is it though?" Wayne challenged. "I'm still a soldier, and there are orders," Kersey insisted. "Orders from who exactly?" Wayne scoffed. "Some general who is floating on a ship." Some asshole politician 3,000 miles away. If you disobey those orders, who is coming to punish you? If I didn't know better, Wayne, I'd swear you were recruiting me, Kersey said with a grin. Oh, hell no, Captain. You're misunderstanding me, Wayne laughed. While I value our friendship, after being cooped up in here with you, I'm pretty sure I'd be okay not seeing you for a few weeks. Kersey let out a laugh, matching Wayne's knowing smirk before continuing. So what are you trying to get at then? We're in a brave new world, Captain, Wayne began, and your friends back in Seattle are going to have their hands full with my friends from Bend. I'm not trying to recruit you or tell you where to go. I'm just trying to be a good friend and open your mind to the possibilities this new life has to offer. So if my men and I wanted to retire to Kuna, you wouldn't be coming after us? Kersey asked. Honestly, Captain, after I tell my higher-ups that there's no more bullets to be had from Boise, I'd be surprised if they even sent us there anymore, Wayne replied. Frankly, we have bigger issues to deal with, like how to keep hundreds of people warm and fed during the winter that's about to whoop our asses. Kersey contemplated Wayne's words for several moments before giving him a slight nod. I'm not saying what we're doing, but the thought of being able to kick back and not worry about someone shooting at me does sound appealing. And who knows, Captain, Wayne added with a grin, after you kick back and mellow out a bit, maybe you'll finally come around on our friendship. Kersey let out a chuckle, amused by Wayne's constant reference to their supposed friendship. I don't know what the future holds, Wayne, but I'm pretty sure in a different timeline we very well could have been friends. Hell, Captain, Wayne chuckled, with the way this timeline is going, I'm afraid to think what another one could look like. I mean, what in the hell would we be fighting? Vampires? Werewolves? Hippies? Oh, give me that hippie fight any day of the week, Kersey said, laughing. Oh, now, Captain, you can't go underestimating those hippies. They're crafty, Wayne countered. It sounds like you've had some negative experiences with them, Kersey observed. Yeah, well, Wayne replied, let's just say I ran into some at a festival a few years back and have a 2-week blank spot in my memory. Please don't take offense to this, Wayne, but that sounds like something you would enjoy, Kersey teased. On paper? Absolutely all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. In reality? Let's just say I have ink where no man should have it, Wayne confessed. Kersey's mind wandered at the thought, prompting sustained laughter from him. After composing himself, he spoke sincerely. As a professional courtesy, I'll refrain from pushing further on that. That's much appreciated, Captain. That's much appreciated, Wayne replied. The two men broke into more laughter as they continued building their makeshift defenses for the looming battle. Chapter 7. Sergeant Copeland sat behind the wheel of the SUV, the militiaman Brody riding shotgun. Both of them checked their weapons, ensuring they were topped off with fresh magazines. Copeland adjusted his communicator earpiece as Alex's voice crackled through. Sergeant, do you copy? I hear you loud and clear, Alex, Copeland replied, his voice steady. What's your status? We are in position and ready to roll when you give the signal, Alex responded. Copy that. Stand by, Copeland instructed before grabbing the radio, flicking it on and speaking with authority. All right, Captain, we're in position and ready to do this. Are you two ready? Yeah, Copeland, we're ready to go. Captain Kersey's voice came through, tense but determined. But it's going to be a minor miracle for the outer wall to hold, so don't take too long. Don't worry, Cap, Copeland assured. I'm at the edge of the parking lot with the engine running. I'll be on your position in 20 seconds. Copy that, Copeland. Good luck. You too, Cap. The line went dead as Copeland clicked on his earpiece again. Okay, Alex, we're ready to go. We move on your mark. We're moving now, Alex replied, clicking off his communicator before looking around the SUV. Bretz was in the passenger seat, the explosive device in his hand. Johnson and Nick were situated in the back seat. Okay, are you boys ready to do this? Let me get situated, Bretz muttered, pulling himself up from a seated position, poking his head out of the sunroof. Once he got his feet set, he tapped on the roof of the SUV. Buckle up, because here we go, Alex announced, throwing the SUV into drive, accelerating quickly as they emerged from the neighborhood. The tires squealed as they reached the parking lot, cutting the wheel hard to the right so they were lined up with the back edge of the horde. "Hang on," Alex shouted. Everybody braced as the SUV jumped the curb and landed on the grass, the tires quickly regaining traction as they sped across the open area. The majority of the mob paid them no attention. However, several at the back turned their heads at the noise. They excitedly shambled away from the back of the pack, forcing Alex to adjust course so they wouldn't hit them. While he didn't worry about the SUV being able to take the impact, he was concerned about flailing corpses striking Brett's. After a few seconds of driving, they were directly across from the classroom. "Throw it now, Corporal," Alex ordered. Brett's pulled his arm back and threw the explosive device into the horde. He underestimated his strength. It flew much farther than he had intended. "Damn it," he cursed, sliding back into his seat as Alex continued driving them away from the horde. They rattled around the cab as they reached the road, finally pulling to a stop at the next intersection. "Damn it. Damn it," Brett's repeated, frustration in his voice. "What is it, Brett's?" Alex asked, glancing over at him. "I threw it too damn far." "How close did you get it?" Alex inquired, his expression tense. "It's maybe 25 yards from the building," Brett's replied. Alex wore a concerned look as he clicked on his communicator. "Sergeant, we have a problem. The device is too close to the building." "How close is it?" Copeland's voice was sharp. "Maybe 25 yards, Alex answered. A long pause followed before Copeland spoke again. "Give me the odds." "Oh hell, Sergeant," Alex replied, frustration creeping in. "Probably 30% chance it collapses the wall. 10% chance there's nothing left of the classroom." "We're going to have to risk it," Copeland decided. "Sergeant, I can make another pass. We have more devices," Alex suggested. "Look at the mob, Alex," Copeland countered. "They're pulling back from the building. They're already back 20 yards, and they'll be twice that by the time you get back there. You're not hitting the original target." Alex thought about it for a moment before smacking the steering wheel in frustration. "I hate to admit it, but you're right." "You did what you could," Copeland reassured. "Now hit the detonator and light them up." "Okay, Sergeant," Alex confirmed. "It's going up in 10 seconds. "Copy that," Copeland replied. "We'll be ready." Alex pulled out the detonator, powering it on, his finger hovering over the trigger. He glanced over to Brett's, who looked like he was about to puke from the stress. "Hey, it's okay, Brett's," Alex said softly. "That was an unbelievably difficult throw. You did the best you could." Brett's let out a sigh, nodding to Alex, knowing that he was right. "Okay, here goes nothing," Alex murmured. With a single trigger pull, all sound in the area was overshadowed by the detonation. The men inside the SUV were forced to look away from the explosion, shielding their eyes from the brightness and the shaking of the windows as the shockwave rattled it. As the initial blast subsided, everybody looked out towards the school, hoping that the side of the building was still intact. "Come on, still be there. Please still be there. Please still be there," Brett's whispered to himself. It took several moments, but finally, they could see the building. Their hearts sank a bit as the walls of several classrooms lay in rubble, the rooftop sagging from the lack of support. "Oh my God," Brett's muttered. Alex clicked on his communicator, his voice elevated and frantic. "Sergeant, you need to get in there now." Inside the school, both Kersey and Wayne's heads ached from the force of the blast. Their ears rang as they struggled to regain their composure inside the coat closet. "Are you okay, Wayne?" Kersey asked, concern etched on his face. "Yeah," Wayne replied, wincing. "Just don't give me a hearing test anytime soon." "Yeah, no shit," Kersey agreed. "I'm starting to think they got that a little too close," Wayne commented. "Let's find out how close," Kersey replied, gripping his gun tightly as he opened the closet door. They stepped out quickly, raising their weapons, but struggled to see through the cloud of dust and debris. While they couldn't see, they could hear the moans coming from just beyond. "Jesus, it's wide open," Wayne muttered. Kersey grabbed the radio, yelling into it. "We're exposed. Get us out of here." There wasn't a response, At least not one curse he could hear as Wayne opened fire. The captain strained his eyes, trying to see what he was targeting. It took a moment before he saw movement. Lots of movement. Damn it, Kersey cursed under his breath. Kersey raised his handgun, picking out shadowy targets through the still settling dust. He fired off a couple of rounds, dropping zombies as Wayne continued to open fire. Within seconds, they realized that while the outer wall had collapsed, the zombies that had been pressed up against it were still in one piece, pulling themselves off the ground. "What in the hell are you waiting on, Captain?" Wayne shouted. "An invitation. Well, here it is. You are cordially invited to light these motherfuckers up." Wayne dropped his empty magazine, quickly slapping in a fresh one and opening fire on the slowly encroaching horde. Both men fired at every shadow that moved, trying to stem the tide. Kersey dropped several of them before his handgun clicked empty. Before he could call out for more ammo, gunshots began popping off from in front of them. Several creatures dropped to the ground as Copeland and Brody emerged from the dusty haze. "We gotta move," Copeland yelled. Both Kersey and Wayne broke from their positions, leaping over their makeshift barricade and joining the others in racing to the SUV. Copeland and Brody continued laying down fire, hitting zombies on either side of the vehicle and clearing their path. A few moments later, everybody dove in through the driver's side doors, piling into the vehicle and getting situated. As soon as the doors slammed shut, Copeland hit the gas, propelling the SUV forward. Everybody inside the cab bounced around as they drove over several zombies on the ground. There were several tense moments as the SUV struggled for traction before regaining it. Within moments, they were on the street, making the turn towards the intersection. Copeland pulled up alongside Alex, stopping just beside him as Wayne crawled into the front seat. "That's some damn fine work, Alex," Wayne praised. "It's good to see you, Wayne. Are you okay?" Alex asked. "My ears are going to be ringing until Christmas, but other than that, we're okay," Wayne replied. "We can all catch up later," Copeland interjected. "Right now, we have to get the hell out of town." "I'm following your lead," Alex said. "Where are we going?" "We're going straight across the bridge," Copeland directed. "What if there's resistance?" Alex questioned. "I can all but guarantee there will be," Copeland admitted. "When we smack into them, I want you on my ass. Just push us straight on through if you have to." "You got it, Sergeant," Alex confirmed. Copeland nodded before hitting the gas, the SUV lurching forward as it quickly picked up speed. "Look at that," Wayne chuckled. "A man after my own heart. Forget the foreplay, it's straight to the action. I like it." "You may want to buckle up," Copeland advised. "Yes, sir," Wayne replied, his tone amused, almost mocking, clearly enjoying pushing the sergeant's buttons. Copeland, on the other hand, ignored the militiaman, keeping his attention focused squarely on the road ahead. After a few sharp turns, the convoy had the bridge within their sights, and it was still jam-packed with zombies. It confused the men at first as to why so many were still there until they noticed movement coming from inside the cars. The trapped ghouls acted as beacons for the zombies outside. "Brace yourselves," Copeland warned. Copeland sped up as much as he could while keeping control of the SUV, while everybody else tensed up. Both vehicles screamed down the street, crossing the threshold of the bridge and slamming into the 100-strong mob of ghouls. Everyone in the lead vehicle lurched forward as they decelerated, only to be jostled about when Alex's SUV slammed into their back bumper, increasing their speed. Copeland struggled to keep the SUV straight, but managed to do so as they plowed through the mob of undead. Several tense moments later, they crossed the threshold and emerged onto the road with nothing but clear pavement ahead of them. They drove around the bend, getting behind some trees for cover before coming to a stop. Alex pulled his vehicle up to the side, stopping so they could talk. "Are you boys okay? I hope I didn't hit you too hard," Alex called out. "Yeah, we're fine in here," Alex, Wayne assured. "We're going to need some ibuprofen coladas when we get back to town, but it's better than being zombie chow." "I'm glad to hear it," Alex replied. "So now what's the plan?" Wayne asked. "I hope you boys ain't gonna make us hitchhike back to town." "We have another team at one of our safe houses," Copeland explained. "We're going to rendezvous with them there, resist the urge to whoop some ass, and then we go our separate ways." Wayne cracked a smile as he chuckled. Whoop some ass, huh? Sounds like you met Tyler. We've met, Copeland confirmed. Yeah, that boy's chip on his shoulder has a chip on its shoulder, Wayne laughed. But he's damn good in a fight, so he's worth keeping around. If you say so, Copeland muttered. Wayne continued laughing as Copeland put the SUV back into gear, looking over to Alex before driving off. It's a few miles up, just follow me. Chapter 8. Day 0 plus 70. 3:47 a.m. Captain Kersey had stepped out of the small office he had been using as a makeshift bedroom, wide awake and restless despite the late hour. The factory, bustling for the last few weeks, was now mostly silent, save for the sound of frozen rain tapping lightly against the skylights. Kersey walked slowly down the aisle toward the break room, 100 yards away, taking his time to look around at the dormant machinery, wondering if they would ever be used again. As he approached the break room, he noticed the light was on inside. Who in the hell is up at this hour? He muttered under his breath as he opened the door, finding Corporal Bretz pouring 2 cups of coffee. Bretz glanced up and offered, I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of making you a cup too. Kersey raised an eyebrow. How did you know I'd be up in the middle of the night? Because you've done this for the last 3 nights, Bretz replied with a grin. My room's right next door, you know. Kersey chuckled, nodding as he motioned for the cup of coffee, which Bretz slid across the table to him. Both men took a seat, settling in as they savored their drinks. So what's on your mind, Captain? Bretz asked. Just the usual, Kersey replied with a sigh. It's too quiet in here, so I can't sleep all that well, and my mind wanders. And you wonder if you're making the right choice? Bretz inquired. Kersey's eyes grew distant. I mean, wouldn't you? We've given so much to the military, lost good friends, and have enough trauma to keep our minds busy for 3 lifetimes. And now we're calling it a day? No, we're not calling it a day, Bretz countered. We're just taking a break for some much-needed R&R, because God knows we've earned it. Kersey shook his head slowly. I don't know, Bretz. It feels more permanent than that, doesn't it? Bretz shrugged. I'm sure some of the men feel that way, especially since they're getting fresh, hot-cooked meals down in Kuna. Kersey chuckled, seeing Bretz's eyes light up at the mention of hot food. Don't worry, Bretz. We're going to be there by sundown. I'm just saying, Bretz continued, I'm sure the men feel like that at the moment. But I know if the situation ever called for it, they'd have their weapons in their hands and be ready to follow you to wherever they were needed. I hope you're right, Bretz. I hope you're right, Kersey murmured. I know I'm right, Kersey, Bretz insisted. You're a hell of a leader, and these men would follow you anywhere, even if it didn't have a home-cooked meal waiting for them. Kersey chuckled again, and they continued drinking, sitting in silence as they drained half of their cups. Do you want some more? Bretz offered. Yeah, might as well, Kersey replied. We still have some work to do before shutting this place down for good. Bretz nodded, grabbing the coffee pot to refill their cups. So what did Seattle have to say about us taking a vacation? Kersey sighed. It's hard to say. It should be pretty easy to say, actually. Unless. Bretz trailed off, realization dawning on him. You haven't told them yet, have you? Kersey grimaced. I haven't talked to them in the last 48 hours. I just didn't know how to break it to them, especially after deflating their spirits when I told them there weren't any more bullets coming from us. I can't imagine the pressure those guys are under, Bretz said, shaking his head. Clint and Gad seemed capable as hell, but trying to fight a war against the militia with no bullets while keeping a population that size alive. I'm getting an ulcer just thinking about it. Which is why I haven't added to it, Kersey replied. They know how to reach me, so if they needed something, they would have reached out. Before Bretz could respond, Kowalski's voice crackled over the radio on the table. Bretz, do you copy? Get the cap and get out to the front. We have a situation. Bretz and Kersey tensed up, setting their mugs down as Bretz grabbed the radio. I'm here, Kowalski, and I got the cap here too. What's going on? Just get out to the front, Kowalski replied, his tone urgent. Kersey snatched the radio from Bretz's hand speaking in an exasperated tone. Jesus Christ, Kowalski, we're going to need some more information. Do we need guns? Do I need to call Kuna and rally the troops? It's nothing like that, Cap. I think Wayne's here, Kowalski answered, sounding uncertain. Kersey and Bretz exchanged a confused look before the captain responded. Copy that, Kowalski. We're on the way. Kersey put the radio down, and they exited the break room, walking quickly toward the front of the building. What in the hell is Wayne doing here? Bretz asked. I thought you just agreed to weekly radio chats and nothing else. That was the agreement, Kersey replied, his brow furrowed. Christ. This can't be good, Bretz muttered as they picked up the pace, rushing toward the front of the building. As they emerged into the bright moonlit night, freezing rain lightly pelted them. A split second after emerging, they heard a loud whistle and looked up to the guard tower, spotting Kowalski. Rather than being in a defensive position, the sniper was standing there casually, no weapon in his hands. What the hell? Kowalski, what is going on? Kersey shouted. Just get to the gate, Cap, Kowalski called down, his voice shaky as if something had disturbed him. Ignoring Kowalski's tone, Kersey and Bretz walked toward the front gate, opening it up and spotting an SUV 10 yards from the entrance. A large white flag fluttered in the breeze from the sunroof. Well, a white flag is a good sign, Kersey remarked, standing in front of the gate. They waited a moment before the driver's side door opened. A pair of hands jutted up from behind it, and Wayne stepped out slowly, speaking loudly. Captain, I am unarmed, and I'm not going to make any sudden movements, Wayne declared. Kersey and Bretz stood there, confused. The last time they had seen Wayne was at the safe house, parting on non-hostile terms, agreeing to a weekly chat to keep the peace since there was nothing of value to fight over. Wayne, what in the hell are you doing, man? Put your hands down, Kersey called out. Just remember, Captain, I am unarmed, Wayne repeated. Okay, noted, Kersey replied. Now put your hands down and come here so we can talk. Come on, we have some coffee brewing in the break room. Despite the invitation, Wayne stayed by his SUV with the door open and the engine running. While I appreciate the offer, my friend, you'll forgive me if I'm a little hesitant given the situation, he said. Kersey and Bretz exchanged confused glances before turning back to Wayne. I mean, yeah, I'm a little pissed I'm out in the freezing cold in the middle of the night. But I'm not going to shoot you over that, Kersey replied. My God, you don't know, do you? Wayne asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. I don't know what, Wayne? Did something happen in Kuna? Kersey pressed. No, Kuna is fine, Captain, Wayne answered. It's Seattle, and I just found out about it myself, which is why I'm here in the middle of the night to tell you man to man that I had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with what? Kersey asked, his concern growing. Yeah, Wayne, what happened in Seattle? Bretz echoed. The soldiers could see that Wayne was shaking, clearly rattled by whatever he knew, putting them on edge. Wayne, talk to me, buddy, Kersey urged. If I had known what they were planning, I would have warned you. I swear to God, Captain. I don't like it when civilians are hurt, Wayne said earnestly. Okay, I believe you, Wayne. Now, what in the hell happened? Kersey demanded. I don't know the details since it's need to know, and apparently I didn't need to know, Wayne admitted. But I overheard them talking about taking the fight to the military and hitting them where it hurts. Jesus, do you know how bad it is? Kersey asked, his voice tight with anxiety. I wish I knew, Wayne replied. But it was bad enough for me to drive out here in the middle of the night to let you know that I didn't know about it. Okay, I appreciate that, Wayne, Kersey said, nodding. Look, I gotta get back before they know I'm gone, Wayne continued. Let's move up our weekly talk to tonight. 1900 hours. Okay, and see what you can find out, Kersey agreed. You too. And Captain, Wayne added. Yeah, Wayne. I'm sorry. I really am. Kersey nodded as Wayne got back into his SUV and drove away, leaving the three soldiers standing in the freezing rain, stunned into silence. Come on, we need to get Seattle on the line, Kersey finally said. All three men rushed back into the warehouse, moving quickly toward the conference room where a radio was set up. It took Kersey a moment to get it running and connected. He picked up the receiver, holding it tightly in his hand, almost afraid to hit the call button. Seattle base, this is the Boise outpost. Do you copy? He said into the radio. The few seconds of silence seemed to stretch on for hours before Kersey hit the button again. Seattle base, this is the Boise outpost. Do you copy? Kersey stared at the receiver, willing a voice to come through, but none did. After a solid minute of staring, he placed the communicator back on the table, backing away slowly from it. How is there no answer? Somebody is always monitoring that channel, Kowalski said, bewildered. Apparently not, Bretz replied grimly. Kersey continued staring down at the radio, hoping a voice would crackle through. So what in the hell do we do about this? Kowalski asked, his voice tinged with urgency. It's not like we can just pack up and head out on a rescue mission. And even if we could, a handful of us aren't going to do much good, Bretz added. Cap, what do we do? Kowalski asked again. Kersey's gaze remained locked on the radio, nothing but static coming through. Finally, after another tense moment, he spoke. I wish I knew, Kowalski. I wish I knew. The end.